I'm
Yeah.
Greg. I'm growing. I got my hair going here.
Good shit. I got mine all back here. Johnny's got his. Morgan's got his.
Yeah, I got mine just going back behind my hat.
Yeah, mine's all back here.
See, I don't have that much, but
Should have got Johnny to throw a
All right,
steak.
we go. Let's count it down. No, I wish I had a damn light right there because it makes me look.
A pre-show show. Johnny, we're gonna let Morgan reread your email.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
You want me to read out all of them? Because I can read it out all of them.
It should just be 2 paragraphs, I think. Kyle?
Yeah, it's not long.
A paragraph here. A couple here about the
Oh, there goes Greg.
And then a lot
just
on the urban heat.
touch on the winter forecast and the severe weather forecast.
Mm-hmm. So we'll wait for a few.
Just
I
people
just told him chill. That so we got it. Chill. Greg's going off. He's like, are we on or what? I'm like, yes. Like, chill. We got it.
Touch on the winter thing and the severe weather that he put on there.
Wait for a few people to get on, and then we'll get underway. A few things to talk about in this particular podcast.
Are we live on YouTube?
Yeah, we are.
Alrighty.
So, Josh, no more profanities when the Rangers start getting scrappy.
Yes, sir. You either.
Yeah, I'm not watching the game, so I can't tell. I'm home free.
Well, if I say goal, you'll know I'm happy.
Yeah.
That means you're both happy.
Oh, yeah.
And shoot, you're playing the Bruins, so I think that'll make me happy too, since I'm a Flyers fan.
And I know Johnny over there, he's waiting on Mississippi State baseball. They always have a good team.
Greg's just put in the YouTube chat, don't yell at me, Kyle cries intensely.
I'm not a big fan of sports.
Oh, okay.
So he's like Greg.
So he's like,
yeah,
Greg,
you and Greg are
well, welcome in, everybody. So we just look at some crap.
What episode is this, Morgan? Is this 3 or 4?
Some single-digit number, and that's all I can tell you.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
2 seconds, brief intermission. 4.
There we
This
go.
is 4. Well, tonight we welcome Johnny aboard with us.
Oh, yeah.
Out there from Smithville,
Meteorologist.
Mississippi, meteorologist Johnny Parker.
That's right.
You got it right. Don't get it wrong.
We're welcoming
They're
you.
coming for you. You better watch out.
That's right.
Should we count how many strokes I have on stream tonight in terms of speaking? Because I just had one under my breath, and we just started.
Hey, don't forget what Greg's counting. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yikes.
Don't remind us.
I just said it there. Anyhow, welcome in to a United Weather Network podcast briefing thing on a few things. First of all,
I got them all written down.
Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
First of all, big ice storm planned to go all the way from the southern United States up through the northeast, dropping upwards of half an inch of ice in most areas that will be along the temperature gradient that supports ice accumulation. So, big significant impacts forecasted for those areas in terms of travel and also hazards as you move through the next few days into next week. Additionally, there is the potential for some severe weather across Florida tomorrow. It would be in the Big Bend, including Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando. So that's something else we're going to have to keep in mind.
Perhaps Tallahassee as well.
Indeed. Day 2 and 3 marginal risks are in effect, citing tornadoes and hail. So there's the definite potential for some sort of cell to move inland that could be capable.
Right.
It could be capable of producing a brief tornado or some damaging wind. What else am I not thinking of? Oh. So, in addition to that...
The polar vortex.
Yes, the polar vortex that's going to be dipping down into the central United States. You're going to see a lot of sub-zero temperatures going up and down the plains. And then right after that, we have a forecast update for what could be a potential Dixie Alley severe weather event that could include all hazard types. So this would be through Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. There is the potential for a tornado event. At least that's what long-range model runs are showing with their crappy thermos.
I would say possibly South Carolina.
Indeed, yeah, if the system can actually move fast enough. So that'll also be something to keep in mind, the potential for severe weather in areas like Atlanta.
Pushing towards the coast.
In areas like Atlanta, Birmingham, Jackson.
Memphis might be on there. Memphis might be on there.
Memphis might be
on the
Savannah,
northern edge.
Maybe.
I don't
Savannah,
know.
I'd say Lexington, Texas, Knoxville, Nashville, Tuscaloosa, Memphis, south.
Anywhere basically that it is located in and around Dixie Alley. So welcome in. We're going to get straight into this here. We're already 8 minutes in, and I'm extremely tired. So, what we have to deal with, the potential for an ice storm to evolve over the next few days over portions of the southern United States extending all the way up into the northeast. So if we just take a look at the North American model run here, we can
two of them actually.
Indeed. So we can see an initial pocket of ice developing in northern North Carolina and southern Virginia. And I'm going to pull up my pen tool here because that would be miles easier. Apparently it isn't open. So the potential for ice will exist in areas like northern North Carolina and southern Virginia. Could see up to half an inch, potentially even more of ice accumulation in those areas.
Excuse me, more you want to break down to a regional view for the potential mid-Atlantic, maybe?
When my pen stops being
I mean, it's gonna happen in the southeastern United States first.
Not first. This is supposed to happen tonight.
Oh, okay. This one's supposed to happen tonight.
Yeah.
And then there's a secondary one that's going to happen down towards the Gulf states, evolve into the Ohio and Tennessee valleys across the mid-Atlantic and then into New England.
Indeed. So we can see as time goes along this evening, this is actually early morning tomorrow, about 4 a.m., you can see a big pocket of ice developing west. That's not west, that's east.
North Carolina.
East of the Appalachian
Virginia.
Mountains on North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, etc., developing and then pushing. Actually, it's not really pushing anywhere. It's kind of stationary in terms of the temperature gradient. It sits over those areas of Virginia, producing a good amount of ice accumulation, which is something to be noted.
Gets into Jersey and Delaware early.
Indeed,
and then
That is
The
during the
13th
afternoon tomorrow on
tomorrow.
Saturday. So sleet is possible over portions of southern New Jersey, potentially even to Pennsylvania, Delaware. You can see a pocket of ice there.
Probably freezing rain to the north and sleet to the south.
Well, I was
Indeed.
about to say that on the
There
on
you
the
go. See, the
frontal map,
the, the, pur- the
on the
purple is
frontal
going to
map,
be,
it
yep, the
looked like
purple is
it was
going to be
going to,
freezing rain.
on the frontal maps. It looked like it was going to drag a stationary front up north.
Indeed. In terms of the
Let's go
second
here.
storm that we're going to have to monitor, so that's the first one. The second storm could be much more significant in terms of wintry impacts. So as
Mhm.
it, I need a further sector south. I didn't think
Look
I
at
would need
that
a
in
further
the,
sector south.
yeah, I was going to say probably the southeastern. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that'll work.
Speed. So we can see here as the troughing digs
Snowfall.
down through the Rockies and down to the mountains of western Texas, eventually
Even in the
shooting
Mexico.
out, into New Mexico, and then shooting out into Texas. We can see a low pressure start to develop off the coast of Houston that pushes off to the north and east, bringing very heavy snowfall and sleet totals to areas in the Arklatex and potentially even in
Freezing rain.
western Mississippi. Freezing rain, sleet, and snow, all potential hazards. So as that pushes off, the density of it gets much larger, and the potential for more significant accumulation gets much larger as the low pushes off further to the north and east and gets stronger. So we can see with this, the sleet remains pretty persistent, but the freezing rain really picks up as it gets towards Nashville and potentially maybe even dipping down to areas that are north of Jackson.
Morgan, I think the freezing rain is going to be the purple. The sleet will be the, I think, pink.
The
Okay, no, never mind. Yeah, you're
freezing
good.
is red. The freezing would
Yeah,
be
that
red, orange.
Okay,
that
so
would
that means the temperatures are 32 at the ground and it's raining above the surface, so that rain is going to freeze on contact. And then the sleet, that means it's going to be a mix between basically rain and snow, and then you have your all snow line there.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah that last frame had the freezing rain all the way down to Columbus, Mississippi.
That's
Indeed.
pretty crazy.
So I'm just going to draw out a little line here, and if we take a look at temperatures, we can see that the colder temperatures typically seem to remain east of this line.
That's very
west.
cold out
That's
there.
not east. The colder temperatures seem to remain west of the line, dipping down into the mid-teens. However, what's going to cause the freezing rain and sleet is what happens above the surface. So if we take a look at 700 millibars, you can see the temperatures closer up there are really not as cold as they are at the surface, which is going to lead for freezing rain in areas like Nashville and extending
Right.
down into northern areas of Alabama and Mississippi. I don't know what kind of circle that was. If we take a look at the 850 temperatures, we can see there's a difference here. So you can see a distinct temperature line going all the way up the Mississippi River, extending to the border of Kentucky. And you can see temperatures not so freezing here. It's just slightly above the surface. So in areas west of Nashville, where there's going to be sleet and freezing rain, it's going to be something you're going to have to keep in mind in terms of the precip type. So with this being said, while the temperature may be freezing at the ground, it's not necessarily freezing above the ground. So it's going to be rain good 1,000 meters up. By the time it hits the surface, it'll be freezing. So what'll happen is the rain will stick to the ground and flash freeze. So that'll create for extremely hazardous driving conditions, as well as
Like the pile up that you saw the other day in Fort
Indeed,
Worth,
like the pileup we saw in Fort Worth.
which is just completely tragic.
Very. So
That's insane. I couldn't imagine that.
So with areas like this, you're going to have to bear in mind the temperature boundary and how that might affect precip type. So you can see areas in that circle of the warmer 850 millibar temperatures seem to be on the leading edge of the differential precip types. Areas that are a little bit warmer above the surface are going to get freezing rain. Areas a little bit cooler are going to get sleet because the smallest temperature change and it'll come down as ice pellets rather than rain.
There's also elevation out there as well.
Indeed.
So
Where do I
keep
wanna
that in
look
mind
at?
if you're driving
Where
through
do I want to look
middle
at? I wanna
middle
look at
Tennessee,
this.
Kentucky.
So in terms of actual snowfall totals, this is something that we're going to
Hmm.
need to monitor closely for trend adjustments and changes.
Absolutely.
So as with as the system moves up, you can see very heavy snowfall totals over the Arklatex. Well, less so the La of the Arklatex. The La Oaktex. La Oaktex. You can see very heavy snow, potentially getting over a foot in some areas that are staying to the north and west of the temperature gradient. Areas like southeastern Missouri seeing almost a foot and a half of snow potentially in these areas.
Mm. It's
At
going to be pretty
least,
significant.
this is Greg saying in the YouTube chat, at least 9 dead now and 136 vehicles involved. So ice in this kind of scenario is very hard
That's
to
insane.
tell. You really can't see if it's on the ground or not, if it's really going to affect your tires. That's why it's very important to monitor local Department of Transportation for updates about a situation that could involve some icy conditions.
And we're talking about DC metro area, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Wilmington, all going to be affected by a potential ice storm here within a few days.
Mm-hmm. If you take a look at the GFS,
And even New York City, even up by you, Morgan.
Mm-hmm. So if we take a look at the GFS, it does seem to agree that there will be decent snowfall totals, but it's not so consistent on the location. So
No,
it
it's
has it
not.
shifting a little bit further to the east,
And
and
north.
the snowfall totals being a little less heavy and a little bit more heavy up by the Great Lakes and up by Pittsburgh. So that'll be something to monitor in terms of trends and how the low pressure system actually, begins to play out. If we take a look at freezing rain potential,
This is where it gets scary.
this is where it gets slightly concerning. So
Mm-hmm.
we can see tomorrow morning, even in Virginia, you're going to be talking about ice totals ranging over half an inch. But as time goes along and you get to the second storm, not only is there another spike that's east of Tennessee, but you can see a big spike going all the way down through areas that are west of New Orleans,
Mississippi,
going up to south
Alabama,
of
Middle
Pittsburgh.
Tennessee.
So you're going to be
Yep,
talking
all the way
about
up into
ice
West
accumulations
Virginia.
upwards of a half an inch possible in areas like this. So areas like Nashville could receive an inch of ice. Very heavy precip rates of freezing rain. It's going to create for very hazardous travel. It's going to create for very hazardous just conditions in general.
Treacherous conditions.
Even if you're going to be trying to go outside to walk around, that's going to be very ill-advised.
It's going to be pretty much nearly impossible. Everything that will be on like cement, any kind of roadway, your decks, porches, whatever it may be, is going to be frozen. You're going to see icicles everywhere. It's really, really beautiful, but really dangerous.
If that total comes up, especially down south,
right,
there will be trees down everywhere with the pine trees, especially down here.
Heavy limbs.
There will be power outages.
Power outages. Oh yeah. You get enough ice accumulation on heavy branches over some power lines, then that's gonna unfortunately lead to power outages.
Johnny can speak. Johnny can speak to that. He knows that.
So particularly speaking, Josh, your trees down there aren't as trained to bear the impacts of the forces in terms of winter weather, whereas me up here in northeastern Jersey, our trees are trained. They're ready for this kind of stuff if it happens to come our way. Your trees are just gonna fall. They're just gonna fold on each other at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, half of my trees down here right now are still, everything I've got in my yard is fully leaved. So
speak for yourself. If anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. But if any of y'all have anything else to say about it, I think we can move on to the potential severe threat for tomorrow.
Sounds good.
One would like to emphasize, if any of you guys do need to do find the need to travel in these kinds of conditions, make sure you have a flashlight, food, water, any kind of medication on hand in your car in case you happen to get stuck out on the roadways and need to stay for an extended period of time, because that is definitely
Blanket.
possible. Yeah.
If you don't need to be out there, you shouldn't be out there.
Only go out if it's necessary. Like if you need some sort of smaller groceries, if you need medication. If you're going out there just to go to the bar for the night, that's a bad choice. Don't do that.
No.
Bring the bar home.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Go out early, get what you need, stay home.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can do.
In
'Cause
the
this is-
meantime,
You don't want to see no more Fort Worth pileups like that. That was horrific to watch.
we can transition to look at the isolated severe threat for tornadoes and wind over the next 2 days
For
in
sure.
areas of the Big Bend of Florida, including Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to composite reflectivity and dive a little bit into what we could be expecting over these areas. So as we can see through HRRR indication, a little bit of a Boeing segment starts to evolve in front with some sort of sporadic cells behind. Now, earlier in the day, we can see we actually do get some convection over land with what looks to be a pretty nice singular supercell there on radar indication. Soundings have been pretty consistent over this area of a lot of CAPE, less so the shear and helicity, but very good lapse rates and a good amount of CAPE. So it is definitely possible that we could have some sort of prolonged severe threat for maybe a brief spin-up, brief weak tornado, but the damaging wind threat could definitely be present, as well as maybe even some hail in the...
Right.
as well as even some hail in the stronger cells that move ashore. So as time goes along throughout the day tomorrow, we can see a lot of stuff happening off the west coast of Florida, and then as nightfall hits and the capping starts to hit, you can see the storms kind of fizz as they move on land in Florida. However, this MCS sticks around until the next day, where the threat ramps up again. So you can see maybe even on the eastern coast of Florida, couple isolated cells that could pose a risk once again for some damaging winds and tornadoes. Now, potentially speaking, what we could be dealing with here, the threat could be more diminished on Sunday from what most model runs are showing. The main threat is going to be when the MCS is still young on the day, mid-afternoon, and into the early evening tomorrow. Definitely something you're going to want to keep in mind if you're in areas like Jacksonville, Tallahassee, potentially even if it's not too far east, Tampa, Orlando, and even areas like Melbourne that got impacted last week by the special weather statement event that impacted the area. You have to keep that in mind.
Ocala, Gainesville, out there.
Indeed. If we take a look at surface-based convective available potential energy, otherwise known as surface-based CAPE, you can see as the time goes on along the day, CAPE starts to invect along central Florida, and even getting up as high as 2600 in some areas north and west of Lake Okeechobee, but more or less up and down, up and down the central Florida area. You're going to be talking about CAPE values well into the thousands, and potentially even getting into the 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s in most of these areas. So along these areas, you're going to have favorability for some thunderstorm development. The cells that can happen to initiate along the front are going to be what may pose the threat more so for tornadoes. What you're going to have along the storm line itself, along the line itself, you may have more wind. You may have more of a wind threat. In front of it is where you're going to be dealing with the tornadoes in the better environment suited for these kinds of events. Once you hit the cold front, it's really going to turn all linear. But if you can get any cells that form out in front of it, that's where you're going to pose a risk for tornadoes. So you can see tomorrow, The Cape really moves off most of the shore by about 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then as time goes along into the next day, you can see Cape starts to advect once again in areas like central Florida and north and west of Lake Okeechobee. 2,400 Cape present on these particular areas. Once again, there isn't really much shear or helicity to work with, so any kind of isolated values that will be decent, so anywhere upwards of 130, 140 surface-based helicity, as well as 25 to 30 knots of 1 kilometer shear. That's really where you're going to get the best kind of environments and best kind of suitability for any kind of stronger storm cells. So you're going to have to bear that in mind, like I said, if you're in areas like Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Melbourne, etc. Guys, have anything to add?
Sounds good to me. Plenty of energy, especially tomorrow
Oh, yeah.
for the tornado. I mean, if there's going to be some tornadoes, tomorrow would be the day looking like right now.
Yeah, before the cap breaks and everything. It's going to be with that initial push on shore, most likely. I was going to say, it's just pretty crazy how Southeast Texas in the models, they might see their first snow in over 30, 35 years due to the subarctic temperatures. And I don't know, Josh, what do you have to say?
Josh seems focused on the hockey game, truth be told. But if y'all don't have anything, I will move
Well, no,
on.
I was going to say it's amazing both sides of this storm. Well, this first part of this storm, you've got the severe weather to the south, which is the classic setup this time of year.
Yeah.
You got that kind of it's really kind of a high Cape down there,
Right.
Especially that part of Florida. You normally don't get that high Cape down there in Florida. That's
True.
normally, you might get that up in the Panhandle. You might get it in South Alabama, South. John, I can speak this southern part. That's a tropical Cape. Am I right, John?
Okay.
Yeah, you're.
But normally this time of year, you don't get that high of a Cape in that part of Florida. And I wouldn't doubt tomorrow we get a few tornado warnings out of that.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Johnny, for that.
Shortly before, I'll just pull up the outlook for tomorrow. 2 Tor, 5 wind, no hail threat as we speak, but that could definitely be upgraded as time goes along tomorrow, and we could see potential for more supercells. But with this being said, we're going to go back a little bit to early August of 2020. So Johnny grabbed a few pages for us and a few articles to read about a few different topics, actually. So first of all, Isaias, its damaging and flooding, and the tornadic impacts that it had up and down the East Coast into Delaware. So I'll let Kyle talk about that as well. Talk about the El Niños, and then a little bit about urban heat island effect and its influence on precip in city and in city areas. So, firstly, the impacts that Tropical Storm Isaias had on up and along the East Coast from North Carolina all the way up through New Hampshire. Ironically, I was up there at the time and got pretty substantial damage, actually. Had a few trees of about, I think, 6 to 7 inches in trunk diameter blown over. So, just read the overview of this. Tropical Storm Isaias impacted the Mid-Atlantic on the 4th of August 2020. The storm made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in southern North Carolina late on the 3rd of August. It then began to accelerate northward while remaining inland of the Atlantic coast. As it did so, it began to interact with an unseasonably deep trough over the east-central United States, with the trough capturing Isaias and causing its forward speed to increase significantly as it moved north. As this happened, an upper-level jet streak to the north of the storm rapidly strengthened. While land interaction began to slowly weaken Isaias, the onset of baroclinic processes associated with extratropical transition in this highly dynamic environment allowed the storm to maintain much of its intensity into the mid-Atlantic. As the storm structure evolved, the strongest winds were maintained on the east side of the storm. Numerous wind gusts to strong tropical storm force were measured, especially in New Jersey, Delaware, and eastern Maryland, with a few hurricane gusts reported. In addition, several tornadoes occurred along and east of the storm track. Meanwhile, west of the storm's center, very heavy rainfall occurred, with the greatest amounts over eastern Maryland to southeastern Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley region. Widespread rainfall totals of 4 to 7 inches were reported, with a few amounts in excess of 7 to 8. This led to both severe flash flooding as well as significant river flooding. Widespread minor to moderate river flooding occurred, with a few rivers reaching major flood stage. A couple of sites, including the Little Lehigh Creek at Allentown and the Perkiomen Creek at Graterford, reached their highest levels on record. Finally, some minor to locally moderate tidal flooding occurred, especially in Delaware Bay and the tidal Delaware River, in association with storm surge caused by Isaias. Isaias rapidly departed the region during the afternoon of the 4th of August through residual river flooding continued, especially in eastern Pennsylvania. So in terms of tornadoes, I'm going to hand that to Kyle because he actually had a little bit of stuff to talk about on that note.
Yeah, I was going to say, I went out that one day and I was between basically two rotating wall clouds, and I just sat there in the middle because I didn't want, I was alone. I was actually on my way home from work and I was basically going back towards my house, but I noticed that we had 2 tornado warnings to the south conveniently. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's time to chase a little bit or spot for a second here. And I went out to a position, saw 2 rotating wall clouds that one went through the Angola area of Delaware, which is basically between Rehoboth Beach and Millsboro area. And then the other one was a little bit to the east of Millsboro, just west of Oak Orchard area. And those 2 went on to produce that tornado that was actually the longest in state history for Delaware at, what was it, Johnny? I think 35.3 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, 35.3 miles. And it was actually going on from the out of the southwest from the southeast to the northwest on a line like that, going across the state from about south of Dover to the Middletown, Smyrna, Newcastle County area. So this went between our we have 3 counties here in Delaware. I've seen the wall cloud or rotating wall cloud down here. So it's basically initialized and was about to happen in Sussex County. Could have touched down in northern Sussex County, crossed into Kent, and then traversed all the way into Newcastle County, Delaware. And that was a EF2 tornado as well, with winds, 120 miles per hour, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, some 115, 120, something around there. But yeah, that's definitely record breaking for Delaware. Never really seen something like that before. I had damage in my yard, not tornado damage. It was just probably some kind of straight line wind or hurricane damage or tropical storm wind damage. But we did have I went on my radar scope, looked at scans that I had. There were some gusts that were near 90, 100 miles per hour. I only live basically in where the radar beam hits, it's like 1,200 feet above where I'm located from the Dover radar base there. So we were having winds over nearly 100 miles per hour. So I'm thinking surface based winds were probably 60, about 1,000 feet down. Wouldn't you guys agree with that? If you're reading about 1,000,
especially you're adding the jet streak that occurred in that area, that's enhancing the winds that were ashore even at the time.
You're talking about KDX?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, so
that tropical storm enhanced those tornadoes for sure. It was basically low top convection, and we had a outbreak that happened along that outer band of tropical storm Isaias.
yeah. Couple particularly dangerous situation tornado warnings that night from North Carolina going into Virginia, so that was definitely
All the way up into, I think, New Jersey had them come ashore as well.
New Jersey had a few confirmed tornadoes as well from them,
Hmm.
which
I've
as a
seen
New
footage
Jersey person
from a few spotters.
made me do a double take because I didn't really believe that even at first. Truth be told.
Yeah.
So moving on, we'll talk about El Ninos, La Ninas for a little bit, and then after that we'll get into the urban heat island effect, and then to finish off the podcast, unless I'm forgetting something, which is definitely possible, we'll go into a little bit of long range forecasting for February. I was about to say February Thursday the 18th. Thursday, February the 18th for a potential Dixie Alley severe weather event, including tornadoes. So, there's several indices used to monitor the tropical Pacific, all of which are based on sea surface temperature anomalies averaged across a given region. Usually, the anomalies are computed relative to a base period of 30 years. The Nino 3.4 index and the Oceanic Nino index, also known as ONI, are the most commonly used indices to define El Nino and La Nina events. Other indices are used to help characterize the unique nature of each event. A discussion of El Nino and its impacts is provided in the expert guidance by Dr. Kevin Trinberth. The numbers of the Nino 1, 2, 3, and 4 regions corresponds with the labels assigned to ship tracks that crossed these regions. Data from these tracks enabled the historic records of El Ninos to be carried back in time to 1949, as discussed in classic study by Rasmussen and Carpenter. Nino 1 and 2, 1 plus 2. So that would be from 0 to 10 degrees south and 90 to 80 degrees west. The Nino 1 and 2 regions is the smallest and easternmost of the Nino sea surface temperature regions and corresponds with the region of coastal South America where El Nino was first recognized by the local population. This index tends to have the largest variance of the Nino sea surface temperature indices. Nino 3. 5 degrees north to 5 degrees south, 150 west to 90 west. This region was once the primary focus for monitoring and predicting El Nino. Researchers later learned that the key region for coupled ocean-atmosphere interactions for ENSO lies further west. Hence, the Nino 3.4 and ONI became favored for defining El Nino and La Nina events. Nino 3.4. 5 north to 5 south, 170 west to 120 west. The Nino 3.4 anomalies may be thought of as representing the average equatorial sea surface temperatures across the Pacific from about the date line to the South American coast. The Nino 3.4 index typically uses a 5-month running mean, and the El Nino or La Nina events are defined when the Nino 3.4 sea surface temperatures exceed plus minus 0.4 Celsius for a period of 6 months or more. So for reference, 0.4 Celsius is just under 33 degrees. ONI, 5 north to 5 south, 170 to 120. So this is the same region. The ONI uses the same region as the Nino 3.4. The ONI uses a 3-month running mean, and to be classified as a full-fledged El Nino or La Nina, the anomalies must exceed plus 0.5 C or minus 0.5 C for at least 5 consecutive months. This is the operational definition used by the National by the NOAA. I'm trying to remember. National Oceanic and Aeronautics Administration, I think. It's that or it's very close. Nino 4, 5 north to 5 south, 160 east to 150 west. The Nino 4 index captures sea surface temperature anomalies in the central equatorial Pacific. This region tends to have less variance than the other Nino regions. To define the unique character of each El Nino or La Nina event, Trinberth and Stepaniak, argue that the Nino 3.4 index should be used in combination with an index that they introduce called the Trans-Nino Index, TNI. TNI is defined to be the difference in normalized sea surface temperature anomalies between the Nino 1+2 and the Nino 4 regions. The TNI thus measures the gradient in sea surface temperature anomalies between the central and eastern equatorial Pacific. When the sea surface temperature gradient is particularly large, say due to positive anomalies in the Nino 4 region and negative anomalies in the Nino 1 and 2 region, some researchers classified the event as a Central Pacific El Nino or El Nino Modoki, although the distinction of this type of event as a separate phenomenon is a matter for debate. So that particular article really goes into how forecasting of El Ninos and La Ninas occur, which is very actually useful because we're going to what is forecasted to be our second La Nina year in a row. So in terms of that combination with forecasting severe season, we can see that this year looked very similar to last year in terms of the cooler sea surface temperatures. In the equatorial Pacific, we can infer that the severe pattern is going to be very similar to what it was last year. So potentially over the spring into the early summer, you can see a lot of Dixie events, and then potentially into the summer and into the fall, could see the Midwest and Northern Plains start to get some stuff. Yeah.
I was gonna say the pattern right now is setting up to more of a 2010-11 event.
Yeah, that's what Johnny and Josh are talking about for sure.
Which is quite the concern.
Or 2015-16.
Yeah, there's a lot of years that compare to this one that we're seeing the trends to. That's what Johnny was talking about. That information on, and it compared to a lot of years that dealt with very destructive tornadoes in Mississippi, Alabama, and portions of the Carolinas as well, I believe. The super outbreak went all the way up into New York.
I mean, if you look at the 2010-11, excuse me, climatology on that, you could take that almost back to 73, 74, 74 outbreak.
Right.
It was almost identical. Yeah. Johnny, I mean, you want to speak on that?
So, so I've been saying so there is a lot of there's a lot of there's a lot there's a lot of factors that are a lot of factors that say that this a lot of factors that say that this spring season holds the potential to be pretty bad in terms of in terms of severe weather and a torn and a torn and a torn and a torn and tornadoes and one of my biggest concerns is if we get a big um a big um a big threat a big threat a big threat that that is more 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 into the that's more into the more into the more into the night more into the nighttime hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
The normal
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's always the fear, Johnny. We get them nocturnal tornadoes down here. We get them all the time down here. You know that just well. I do.
Yeah, for
Tennessee's
example,
famous for those too.
Yeah, I'll take an example here. If I remember correctly, the Easter outbreak, 2020, through Tuscaloosa, late at night. I believe it was 8 or 9 Central Standard Time
That
at night.
Fultondale tornado.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Fultondale, that is also very true.
That just happened. Yeah.
But there was a Tuscaloosa tornado that went through, was ranked EF2 after official survey. That went through about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. That was on Easter. That was on the Easter outbreak. So granted, the favorability for tornadoes there was through the roof. Anyway.
Wow.
But it's just an example. Dixie has a thing for spinning up nighttime storms, and it's been proven over the last few years of storm history.
That's normally when the cake breaks.
Indeed.
Mm.
Which is just so convenient because everyone's going to bed and unassuming of anything and everything.
That's a scary situation for sure.
I'm trying to see if I can not read all of this because this is a lot. If I need to, I will read all of it.
Well, I was about to say, Johnny just hit it pretty good there.
I'm talking about the next topic, urban heating and stuff like that.
We ain't got to go over that tonight.
We did that on our Tuesday show.
Yeah,
actually.
did that on the Tuesday stream, and if need be, before some sort of severe weather event, maybe if we're doing it in terms of briefing in terms of a briefing for severe weather, maybe even on Wednesday, because we would do it impending Thursday. Then
Thursday seems to be a storm that's going to be a little worse for areas.
And with that being said, let's take a look at it. The model run guidance has been, at least the long-range model run guidance, has been pretty consistent on some sort of trough digging through Dixie Alley, through Texas, pushing east as time goes along Tuesday, Wednesday, into Thursday next week. If we take a look, well, there's one. That's a weaker trough that's supposed to bring more ice
That's
impacts.
Mississippi, Alabama right there.
Indeed. It's supposed to bring more ice impacts to the region on top of everything else. So that's what's clashing with consistency on the NAM's guidance of this.
Right.
But if we go along, another trough starts to develop after energy pulses down through the Rockies. Energy that pulses down and it gets picked up by Gulf moisture and starts to accelerate. And that's not what I was looking for at all. And by about 18Z on Thursday, we could have a situation on hand that could be favorable for severe weather of all hazard types.
6 p.m. pretty much.
Indeed. So really from 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central, all the way
What
through
day is
the
that?
evening. This is
That's
Thursday,
Thursday.
February the 18th. I will freeze frame this so I can get some better looks at it.
I believe it'll be too cold, but
So if we take a look at the region, we can see some sort of nice line develops of storms extending all the way through Alabama down into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, granted, in front of this, again, like we talked about with the Florida cells that we're going to be talking about next day, tomorrow, anything that can jump out ahead of the front will have the potential for tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail, all hazard types, if it can sustain enough energy that's being brought into it. So if we take a look at temperatures out in front of the line, we can see the temperatures ranging up into the low 70s even in some regions of southern Alabama, extending all the way up into areas. What is this place? I'm blanking.
Like north of Birmingham.
North of
Where?
Birmingham. What's that?
let me get back over there.
I'm
Uh,
having
Josh would know Alabama the best.
you just went away from it.
Huntsville.
Let me get the local
Huntsville.
on
That's
here.
what I was looking
There you
for.
go.
I was about to say
Huntsville.
it cuts off Gadsden. You got Birmingham. You got Huntsville.
Mm-hmm. So even
Tuscaloosa.
Mobile.
Northeastern
About to say,
Alabama.
Tuscaloosa is on that 53 right there. That's where I'm at.
Indeed. Yeah, they're just in front. They're just
52.
actually behind it. So that'd be shortly before probably about 17Z. So if storms can initiate, they will definitely have a good environment to potentially blossom. If we take a look at dew points, they're almost reaching the surface temperatures near up in the high 60s, potentially even reaching to 70. Very important. If the storms can actually gain enough moisture at a time that's conducive for severe weather development, that's not at midnight, then we could have the potential for some sort of severe thunderstorms in and around areas extending all the way up through northern Alabama. If we take a look at some other indices, so if we take a look at theta E, which would be forcing in the atmosphere, you can definitely see there is a good amount above average in terms of what you would need for severe weather. So we typically want to see about 335. Trying to remember the unit. I don't want to say joules because that's wrong, but you can see extending all the way into southern Alabama up by Mobile, you have 340 plus. It's going to be very, very strong in those areas in terms of the forcing.
I think to be honest,
That's convective lift and forcing, right?
Indeed.
I think it'll be more coastal. If that holds up, I think it'd be, if it's tornadic, it'll be more of a coastal.
Like
thing.
Mobile along there, Tallahassee.
I would draw a line south of I-80, Montgomery southward.
So really in this area, you're going to be talking about the biggest threat in my opinion. Now, you have to grant the thermodynamics on the GFS are completely garbage. It's really not used for a severe weather model, even though the temperatures get up there, the severe weather dynamics really do not. So this can really be taken with a grain of salt. The different GFS, actually, I will pull that up really quickly for everyone. The different GFS is a little bit better with thermos and stuff like that. So,
and that's got
There
it.
you go. That's showing Cape right there.
That's got it south of I-80 and Hattiesburg and everything like that.
So stuff to note about this sounding. I'll just take a little bit here. So you can notice the Cape number. I will actually, here's a better idea.
2,700. What we got?
I'll zoom in on it.
2,700.
So, first of all, you can see the skew T's, which would indicate dews and surface temperatures, extending all the way up into the lower 70s for dews and the upper 70s for surface temperatures. You can see them breaking as they get just north of 1 kilometer, which could mean a little bit of opening in the atmosphere for more storms to develop. So if we scroll down here, you can see a little bit of veering in the wind bar. That is a black pen on a black background. You can see a little bit of veering in the wind barbs that could enhance the spin that could be in the atmosphere. A few things to note about this sounding, though. First of all, for February, this is an abnormally high amount of Cape. We usually see in Dixie Alley potentially 1,000, 1,500 cape that would
1,500.
induce
Yeah.
these severe weather events. Well, this is getting up near 3,000, which is
So that's moderate to
Ye-
almost nearly high.
yeah. What
I'd
did
say
we
I'd
have?
say over 3,000 to 4,000 is probably extreme to high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Josh, do you
Anything
remember
over
how much we had
anything
for
over
Easter?
4,000 is.
Josh, do you remember how much we had for Easter?
That was probably pushing 3, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
John?
thought it was 2,500 to
Yeah.
3,000.
So,
What was
yeah,
it
I think
on
that
April?
sounds about
What
right.
was it on April 27th, John? That was like 4.
4,000.
So Cape values, um, so Cape values,
I know it was like
we,
90 degrees.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we probably have been between 3,000 and 4,000 Cape almost.
Yeah,
Wow.
because of the high surface temperatures, that really enhanced it.
Oh wow.
So,
Yeah, that's incredibly high, Cape.
few other things to note about this. First of all, surface lapse rates up into the 7s. We usually want to see upwards of 6 for any kind of severe weather development. This indicates the change in temperature going from the surface to a particular point in the atmosphere.
Right.
This indicates really the enhancement for a hail threat, as well as the enhancement for longer-lived thunderstorms. So 7.3 is more than good enough for any kind of enhanced thunderstorm
Oh
development.
yeah,
Between 6 and 8 usually. Yeah.
Indeed.
shows a good sign of updraft.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is what concerns me.
That's sheer over there, right?
So this is what concerns me. If we take a... I can't draw for my life. If we take a look around here at the shear and the surface relative helicity, and the storm relative helicity, my apologies. Notice how high it is in conjunction with the Cape. Energy Helicity Index is an indice
3.
used to identify a strong environment. The higher it goes, the more dangerous it is, and typically you're looking for 1 to 2 to 3, at least experimentally right now, for a tornadic event. This has it going upwards of 5, in combination with the higher surface temperatures, Cape values, as the shear and helicity all combined together. This is one nice environment if this sounding were to verify. Now, this is still a week out. A lot can change. Do want to put that out on the record. Nothing is official at the moment. The SPC still has yet to really issue anything on this. It would still be in the day 4 through 8 outlooks. However, if the model trends continue to uptrend the way it's been looking, we could be looking at a day 4 or 5, I think 15% severe probabilities for areas of southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, into the Florida Panhandle. More coastal areas. It's definitely a really rich environment if something like this could verify. Now,
Possibly southern Georgia too.
With this being said, if it starts to downtrend, I won't talk about it as much because I've had horrible experiences. In the last about year that I've really started intensely following meteorology, everything either explodes or it's capped. So I really don't, with a weaker environment like the one that we had the other day on Saturday in Florida, where it was 1,500 Cape, about 7 lapse rates, stuff like that, and the SPC worded it a couple intense tornadoes possible. I had a lot of words about that. I'm not going to get into that right now. I really need to see it to believe it at this point. Show me a good environment. Yeah, Josh, are you gonna...
I was going to say the biggest thing about Alabama, Mississippi storms, you have, if there's let's just say a front or something like that coming through, like that right there. If there's a offshore mesoscale that goes across the Gulf, that will cut off every storm north of that. It happens all the time, and your forecast is blown.
Yeah.
Everything will look great up until that mesoscale
in which
forms
it goes
in the Gulf.
kaput.
Yeah.
Last thing before we get out of here, because it is 9:36 Eastern time. I did not expect to be going this long. Notice the rounding in the photograph. It's a little bit enlarged. It's not as big as we'd really like to see, but the multi-directionality of the HODO expanding out is very indicative of some sort of spinning and tornadic environment. So going over the next few days, going into the next half week or so, and particularly, I have a winter break Monday and Tuesday. As we get closer, I'm going to continue to track this more intensely, monitor it, see if there's any different trends, if it's continuing to uptrend, or if it takes a big crap on the majority of the models. I'll continue to monitor this, and potentially we'll have some sort of briefing, maybe either on the Facebook page or on here or on both, on what we could be impending for areas of southern Dixie Alley. So, Josh, Kyle, Johnny, anything
we'll
to say?
have Johnny on it too. I was about to say we'll have Johnny on it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be
All right,
around.
cool.
So it'll be around on that. I'm just gonna take one more sounding before we head off here.
I was
It'll
gonna
be
say
around
if you
on
want
that.
to do a if you
Oh, this is even stronger. EHI of 6.
Where are you at on that?
So this is
Wow.
we map
Um,
it southern Mississippi, Alabama.
it's like
border.
Mobile almost.
Yeah,
So near Mobile,
just southwest of Mobile.
a little bit west of Mobile.
Basically,
Very-
Biloxi.
Very
Biloxi.
Biloxi, Mississippi.
Oh yeah. Very important to monitor for the Mobile metro area and potentially even Pensacola and maybe Jackson, but really the main 3 areas, in my honest opinion, are going to be Mobile, Pensacola, and Birmingham. That's really going to wrap it up for this. I don't have anything else to say. Kyle, Josh, Johnny, anything else? Otherwise, we can get out of here.
I'm good, man. I think we had a
Anything to say, brother?
Yeah. So for Mississippi and across the southeast, you can still see you can still see you can still have our torn you can still see our torn you can still have our torn you can still have our you can still have our torn still have to, still have torn still have torn still have still have torn still have still have still have torn still have still have tornadoes even if your cape even if
low.
your cape values even if you have less than less than 1,000 a cape.
Oh yeah.
right. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Low
The
Cape, high
environment.
shear.
The environment is more than rich enough.
We know that, don't we?
Yeah,
Low
we
Cape
know.
last year for sure.
Yeah, you guys down there
definitely.
really know that. And even me up here in the Northeast, I get all the cold core stuff. I've gotten several
Yeah,
damaging wind
same
events
here.
that have come off of no cape, or when I was up in the Northeast, New Hampshire, Maine over the summer, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 cape in combination with the lapse rates that happen with the White Mountains up there.
Oh yeah.
You can get really anything up there. So you don't even need the kind of environment we're looking at here. And I will go back to this sounding briefly. You don't even need all of this. You don't need the 2,400 cape, the 400 helicity, the 40 shear. This is a really rich environment if this plays out. This is a dangerous one if this plays out.
To be honest, with the Delaware tornado that we had that went 33 miles, we didn't even have that good of an environment.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
No.
Not even close. Not even close.
7 lapses, 400 helicity, 40 shear at the surface to 1 kilometer, 2,500 surface.
We
cape.
had high shear and basically like 500, 600 cape.
I mean, Morgan, what you're saying right now, that'd be normally a moderate to high risk.
Right.
This is a deviant setup if this occurs. A lot can change, a lot might change. We'll monitor it going forward and give updates to the Facebook page as well as any other social media platforms that we manage to get on over the next few days. But other than that, that's really going to be it from what I'm concerned. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to go to sleep because I got to be out the door by 7 in the morning.
Understood.
Wow. You gonna wake up? Oh wait, Kyle, you don't have to wake up.
Kyle doesn't have to wake up. Kyle never wakes up.
I'll be up.
But with that being said, my name is
What do you
Morgan
mean? I
J.
never
Fold.
sleep.
You don't. That is very true. With that being said, my name is Morgan J. Fold. Johnny, Kyle, and Josh on the bottom, and we will see you on the next one.
All right, guys.
All right. Take care.